Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. My name is Florence Dzerzhinsky. I'm the president of the University of Ottawa Institute of Mental Health Research at the Royal, the VP Research at the Royal, and I have the privilege to be your host tonight. But before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering tonight on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And as you know, we wish to express respect and gratitude to the Algonquin Nation for hosting us on their traditional territory. And so, thank you everyone who is taking the time to come in person today, but also online. We have a few people to really explore big ideas with our scientists and to talk about how research can help provide ever better care for people who live with mental health illness and substance use disorders. So I'd like to thank and acknowledge a few key people in the room. We have Chris I, the president of the Royals Foundation. Hello, Chris. I would like to acknowledge Melissa Kroon, who is the co-chair of our campaign cabinet, together with Carl McCutcheon. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I would like to welcome Monica Berger. She is with the Brain Canada Foundation. Thank you for being with us, Melissa. I'd like to welcome as well Steve Adams, who is a key member of the research committee of the IMHR board. I'd like to also mention that our scientific director, Dr. Jennifer Phillips, is with us tonight. So welcome to you all. I'll certainly be remiss if I didn't thank all our three boards. The Royal is a tripartite, the board of the foundation, the board of the research institute, and also the board of the hospital. Certainly your guidance and your support mean a lot more than you will ever know. So without further ado, I would like to talk about Research Week. It's actually the third edition of Research Week at the Royal. It's become a bit of a cornerstone here in this organization, and may I say, one of the fun weeks for us at the Royal. And it's really an opportunity to showcase the interesting and impactful work that we do, for our scientists to exchange with the public and with communities, and really to showcase our commitment to the betterment of mental health care and research. You may have heard us talk about research is care. And that's actually the title of our strategic research plan. But in an organization where a research institute is embedded in a hospital, really means that everything that we do has dual function, progressing research for the benefit of care. And so if we think about it, it is a great opportunity for impact, but also really a great responsibility. And I think our speakers tonight will definitely embody this responsibility that is taken at the highest level. In fact, our research here at the hospital directly, that's our goal, to directly impact prevention, diagnostics, and treatments for mental health and substance use. By getting involved in our research, our patients, our clients gain a sense of agency. If you think about it, research signifies hopes and other options to the treatments as usual. So tonight we are going to talk about two areas of research for care that do not involve medication. They are synergistic and complementary to traditional methods, but I'm sure many of you are eager to hear about methods and options that are non-invasive, painless, and do not provide major side effects. So Dr. Sarah Tremblay is a scientist at the MHR and a tenured professor at the University du Québec en Outaouais. She is going to tell us about neuromodulation. And Dr. Cynthia Guimond is also a scientist at the MHR and a professor tenured at UQ as well. She's going to talk to us about her research in cognitive remediation. I should add that both Cynthia and Sarah were recruited at the Royal as part of the inaugural, and I see Rebecca is here as well, Dr. Rebecca Obiah, recruited as part of an inaugural cohort called the Emerging Researcher in Mental Health Research. That's called ERIM for short. And this recruitment was only doable thanks to the great and outstanding vision of a generous benefactor, the Waverley House Foundation. And this has provided really a turn in how our research enterprise has grown and is making an impact. I am sure that Sarah and Cynthia will demonstrate that to you today and will capture your image in your imagination. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Florence, and thank you to the organization committee for inviting me to present tonight. It's great to see a very full room, and I'm very delighted to talk a bit about the research that I do surrounding neuromodulation. And really what I want to describe tonight is how we can develop a clinic to really provide care through research and clinical trials. So I will be mainly talking about major depressive disorder because it's the main target of our RTMS treatment at the moment, or our neuromodulation treatment that I would describe a bit later in this presentation. So we all know that major depressive disorder is very prevalent in the world, in our community. So according to Statistics Canada, 1 in 8 individuals will experience depression at some point in their lifetime. So if we look at each other in this room, there's a large proportion of us that will at some point struggle with depressive symptoms. And worldwide, we know that more than 280 million people suffer from depression. This is a lot of individuals. According to the World Health Organization, depression will become the leading cause in the world of disability. We also know that there are treatments for depression. So depression is a treatable condition. So we know that medication, psychotherapy can be very effective. However, it is unfortunately not effective for everyone. So we know that about 40 to 60% of people with depression will eventually develop what we call hard to treat depression, or treatment-resistant depression. So altogether, these staggering numbers really highlight the need to develop innovative care to supplement psychotherapy and medication, which can be very effective, but we need more options for people with depression. So one emerging treatment modality, so treatment option for depression, is neuromodulation. And in particular, repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, or RTMS. So I'm going to use RTMS from now on. So RTMS is a type of neuromodulation technique that allows us to target certain circuits in the brain of individuals with depression that we know are related to their symptoms. It uses painless and non-invasive magnetic fields. So here, if you look on the screen, I don't know. Oh, we don't see my mouse. So you see a large magnetic coil that's positioned on the head. So what it does is it sends a magnetic field that's very short and painless, and that modulates brain activity in the specific circuit that we're aiming to modulate. And over time, this can actually change the way the brain is wired through a process that's called plasticity. And this can be rewired for many, many months, many years, helping with symptoms of depression. So RTMS is delivered as a typical treatment, is delivered daily. So people have to come to the clinic from Monday to Friday for 4 to 6 weeks to receive their treatment. And however, it's very short. So it used to be 45-minute sessions, so quite long, quite a big time commitment. But with recent advances in technology, we can offer the same efficacy for 3 minutes only, so much shorter. So now at our clinic, a typical daily treatment is about 10 minutes to 15 minutes. So there's not many side effects, so people can go back to their daily activities. Many of our clients are currently working, so they come during a break, and they go back to work after the treatment. So rTMS is actually very effective, and it's approved by Health Canada since 2002. So it's actually been around for a long time. However, it's a very good demonstration on how long it can take before innovative techniques can become standard of care. So unfortunately, in Ontario at the moment, it is not reimbursed, and insurance companies do not cover rTMS. So the only way to get access at the moment is via research or to pay out of pocket for people that can. But again, it will be only in urban areas, and it can be very expensive for a treatment run. So this is where I'll talk a little bit about how we developed the Neuromodulation Research Clinic at the Royal. So I got here, like Florence mentioned, in 2018 through the ERIM program. And my main goal was to make rTMS accessible, to design a clinical trial that would allow people of Ottawa-Gatineau to receive treatment. So I've put a little bit of a timeline of the progression of our clinic. So in 2019, we got our first rTMS device. So set up a first treatment facility. And we took time to consult, to discuss, to plan the best way to create a clinical trial, the best way as possible. There's probably better ways even, but we tried to design the best clinical trial we could to offer care to as many people with depression in our community. In 2020, we launched our clinical trial. And as you all probably realized, 2020 was also the year where the pandemic hit. So unfortunately, we had to stop our research activity as soon as it started for a few months. But we kept busy. We applied to funding opportunities. We were also very lucky to receive philanthropic support to further grow the rTMS clinic, or the neuromodulation clinic. So in 2021, we expanded our team and we relaunched our trial. In 2022, we received, again, philanthropic support to further grow the clinic, and we launched a second clinical trial. In 2023, we acquired a third rTMS device thanks to the philanthropic support, and we launched a third clinical trial. And in 2024, we did some renovations to our unit to allow for the expansion. Our team further expanded, and we launched a fourth clinical trial. And we don't have 2025, but we're about to launch the fifth clinical trial. So it's been an absolutely beautiful journey of growth, and people that benefited the most of this growth is our clients that were able to receive our treatment. So hopefully this works. So that's a short video that shows the journey of a client receiving care. So we do measurement-based care, meaning that we do many scales to measure multiple different symptoms. And we use the MRI facility that we have here to scan, image the brain of every single person that received treatment. I tried to slow down the video earlier, but I couldn't figure it out. So as a first session, we had to calibrate the intensity of our treatment. And to do that, we actually stimulate the region of the brain that controls the hand, because it's the region that we can get an easy output. And so this is the muscle activity. And we put what we call neural navigation. So it's a headband that's actually used also in neurosurgery, and that allows us to track the head in space and to target the exact circuit that we want to target based on their image of their brain. So this is here an example of what we will see. So we see the person's brain, their muscular activity, and this is what a TMS device looks like. Oh, so I spoke quicker. So as I was mentioning, we're going to stimulate the muscular activity. And then in some studies, we also record brain activity to try to develop markers of our treatment efficacy. So this is what is called EEG that you saw. So it's electrodes that we put on the scalp to measure brain activity. And this is our daily treatment room. So when the person first comes in, we're going to scale their head. It takes about 2 minutes with the pointer that you see. And then we have to position this big coil So for treatment, it's very large because it has to be cool because we send many stimulation in the day. So we adjust the intensity that's personalized to each client, and we position the coil and deliver the treatment. So as I mentioned, the treatment is about 3 to 4 minutes. So we deliver the pulses, and when it's done, the person goes back to their daily activity for the day. All right. Can I go to the next one? Okay. So now that I gave a bit of context on what's the treatment and the growth of our clinic, I want to talk a little bit about our research and what is the recent result that we got through the different clinical trials. So a lot of them, well, they're all still ongoing. Many of them are coming to an end in 2025, so we're very excited to analyze all the data. So the main clinical trial that we started in 2019 is what we call a naturalistic trial, meaning that we wanted to design a trial that's as close to possible to what we would get if we had a community clinic that wasn't through research, meaning we don't want to exclude people as much as possible. So we try to include everyone that have depression for whom it's safe to receive our TMS. So in that study, we include people that have comorbidities such as PTSD, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety, but in these people, we treat their depression. So in the study, we have 4 to 6 weeks of daily treatment. We say 4 to 6 weeks is that we stop if the person reached remission. So if the person does not meet symptoms of depression anymore after 4 weeks. If not, we keep going for an extra 2 weeks. And for individuals that show a positive response, we follow them for 6 months after. So we slowly decrease the number of sessions for 6 months. And we also include multiple outcomes. So I spoke about measurement-based care. So we include, for example, sleep, in collaboration with Dr. Rebecca Robillard, quality of life, anxiety symptoms, lifestyle, brain activity. So there's a lot that we can learn from these types of studies. And one thing that's been very encouraging is our results in terms of efficacy. So typically, we know that RTMS, from many years of study, typically leads to about 50% response, meaning half of individuals will show a significant decrease in their symptoms, and typically it's about 35% remission. We're at 62% response so far in 120 people, and 50% remission. So half of the individuals that come to our clinic will not meet the criteria for depression at the end of the treatment. So that's really encouraging, and that's really thanks to all, we believe that is really thanks to all the advances. We really use the most up-to-date technology that we think can make a difference. So this is really, really positive outcomes, and we're very happy to see that, and can't wait to see what it's going to be at the end of the study.
Code-white concurrent disorder unit inpatient level 2. Code-white concurrent disorder unit inpatient unit level 2.
So one thing that we did look at in this study is the role of physical activity. So the person that you see at the top right of the screen is Dr. Arthur Chavez. He's a postdoctoral fellow working in my lab. And he's very interested in physical activity. And when he came to the lab, he suggested to just add a simple scale at the beginning of before they start the study, in which we just measure how physically active individuals are when they start the treatment. So it allows us to divide the sample into people that are physically active or currently physically inactive, meaning that they don't exercise regularly. And the results have been really very surprising. We expected a difference, but not as big. So what we saw is individuals that are physically active are much more likely to respond to treatment. And when talking much more likely is that the difference was that physically active individuals had an 80% response rate, inactive individuals 30%. So that's a very, very large difference. And so this all came from one scale. And it allowed us to apply to grant agencies and now launch a fifth trial. That's the trial we're going to start in 2025, in which we will test that more directly. So we design an exercise trial. So people that are physically inactive will start exercising before they start RTMS. So we're combining the two to see if we can increase the chance that they respond. So physical activity is something that is readily accessible. So we hope that if the results are encouraging, that could be something that we suggest when someone wants to get RTMS. We could suggest exercise before starting a treatment, especially if we can get 80% response. There's also another trial that started in 2022 that is funded by the Brain Canada Foundation, in which we use the brain scanner that we have here, but the PET side of the scanner. So our scanner has two sides, one side that allows us to image the brain and another side that allows us to look at the metabolism of the brain. And using that scanner, we're able to see how glucose, so energy, is consumed by the brain, and it allows us to really directly look at how activity in the brain is changed during after RTMS. So that's a lot of little light spot that you see in the brain. I won't go in details, but basically what we see so far is after only one session of RTMS, we see important changes in the regions that we know that are linked to depression. And we are almost done with the trial. We have 3 more participants. And after that, we want to see if there's a link between how the brain is changed by one session to if it's linked to how much they will respond after 6 weeks. And if it's positive, we could actually measure after only one session and try predict, try guide treatment, tell the person if yes or no they're likely to respond, for example. We recently started a study in collaboration with a team in Australia that allows us to even further personalize our treatment. So in that study, we're able to measure the brain circuit that is fundamental in the depression of one individual. So it's really individual based, and it allows us to guide the selection of the target for treatment. So we have about 10 people that participated in the study right now. It just started a few months ago, but we're very excited to see the result because we could push even further the response rate by really personalizing treatment. And this is in collaboration with Dr. Larry Tuminen, who's a scientist here at the Royal. And so more recently, we also just launched a youth trial. So far, we were only offering RTMS to people 18 and above, but we think it's also potentially a very important treatment for youth. For example, individuals that don't want to take medication. So we can, a lot of adolescents, we can worry a little bit about the impact of medication on development. So we're gonna now offer RTMS to youth age 16 to 19. And we're gonna look if a once daily or an accelerated treatment in which we deliver 3 treatments a day for 2 weeks to try kind of speed up the process. We're gonna compare both in these youths. And so this is a bit of our vision and our short-term goals. So the vision is really to provide access to innovative care through research. I hope it's a very short presentation, but I hope I was able to show you a little bit how our research allows us to really improve the care that we can deliver. So in terms of our short-term goals, we want to further involve clients and families now that we really have a fully functional clinic to really shape the future of our service. We want to create a continuum of care with different services, like, for example, ECT, esketamine, and also cognitive remediation that you'll hear about today. We want to contribute to the training of fellows and graduate students. So we're already doing it, but we're going to have a fellowship in RTMS. So now we can have psychiatrists from University of Ottawa or elsewhere come and learn about RTMS to then bring it to their practice. And importantly, we also want to develop services for other mental health disorders. I spoke a lot about depression, but RTMS can be used for PTSD, for anxiety, for schizophrenia. So there's a lot more to do. And I'm going to end with two client testimony because I find that they really show the impact of the treatment. So our first client told us, some of the questions I was asked after treatment were about feeling sad. And I had to really think about it. And I said, no, I'm not sad like I was. There are sad things in life, but then you go on to think of other things. And that's the difference. My anxiety and worry about how I am going to carry on has gone away. And another client told us that since the treatment, they had been able to get out of the house and do social things. And the client looked back and said, wow, I felt that way, that bad. I can't believe it. And literally told us RTMS saved my life. So that's very impactful. And I want to end by thanking my team that's growing on the left side, and all my collaborators, funders, and importantly, clients, families, and all the philanthropic support that we have received that made this work possible.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for this wonderful talk. You probably have tons of questions for Sarah, but please hold them. We are going to hear from Dr. Cynthia Guimont, and then we'll have the chance to have a conversation with these two impactful scientists. Cynthia, over to you.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. It was really good. So I feel now I have big shoes to follow. And I'm gonna spend a little bit of time today explaining what we do here at the Royal to help our clients with what we call cognitive health. And I hope that by the end of my talk today, you'll have a better idea of what I mean by that. But before I actually start explaining what we do, I want you to meet Steve. So Steve is a 21 years old undergraduate student at the University of Ottawa. And I want you to go with me through his morning routine. He's waking up at 7 a.m., his alarm ring. He has some medication to take, but he forgets about it. I don't know if this is the case for you in the room, if you have some medication to take in the morning. I remember when I was pregnant and I had to remember taking about my vitamins every day. I was always forgetting them. It's really hard to think about that, even when your thinking skills are doing well. Then he realized, okay, he's opening the fridge. He should have done the groceries the day before. He doesn't have much to eat. Take a yogurt. Opening the TV, he likes to watch the meteorologist in the morning. Sometime in the past, the meteorologist was sending him some special message for him. It doesn't really happen nowadays that often, but he still likes to watch the meteo, and every day he's still doing it. Forget to brush his teeth. He's in a hurry. He's like, okay, I have to take a shower because he has to go to a class in the morning. So he's rushing to the shower. But then in the shower, he's getting a little bit of brain fog. He doesn't have a lot of motivation. Takes a very long time to wash himself, get out of the shower. Time has been passing by. He doesn't feel very motivated to go to school that day. It's something that he realized that since he started his medication, it's harder and harder to get motivated to do things, especially in the morning. He's getting organized, trying to find ways to pick the things he needs to put in his bag, choosing his clothes that he has to wear for his class. Getting organized is a challenge now for Steve. Finally, he's making it to his class, but he arrives late. 30 minutes late. He's quite tired, hungry, he did not eat enough, and he's feeling quite anxious. And this is a representation of a typical morning for Steve. Steve, maybe some of you may have guessed, has schizophrenia. And schizophrenia is a condition that affects about 1% of the population. So when we think worldwide, is about 80 million people who suffer of schizophrenia. It's an enduring condition. And the different symptoms that people who have schizophrenia would experience can be categorized in different groups of symptoms. You might have heard of them, what we call positive symptoms, negative symptoms, and cognitive symptoms. Positive symptoms are those that we more typically connect with schizophrenia in the media. For instance, we're referring to hallucinations, or the voices that people may hear, delusional thoughts. So they might be thinking that the TV is sending them direct messages to them, or that people are following them on the street. These are common symptoms that people may report. The negative symptoms, at the opposite, are they're called negative because there were things that were there before the illness arrived, but since the illness, they were less present. So this is a reduced emotional expression, less motivation, and finally, the cognitive symptoms are related to the thinking skills. So people will report they have difficulty paying attention. They have, more often time, they forget things that are important to do. They have difficulty to organize their days. It may also impact the way they enter in relationship with others, because we're using our thinking skills all the time when we are interacting with people. And this is what we call social cognition, that is on the slide here. And right now, in the treatment that is offered for people with schizophrenia, we do have medication that is doing, I would say, a pretty decent job at controlling the positive symptoms of people. People will oftentimes be able to reduce considerably their hallucinations or their delusional thoughts. But we do not have a lot of options for the negative symptoms and the cognitive symptoms. And I hope that with the example I gave you with Steve, you start to understand that cognitive symptoms has an important impact on the functioning of people who suffer of cognitive impairments. And it has actually, like a lot of literature, I've looked at that in different populations, and they've seen a strong link between increased cognitive impairments and reduced adherence to treatment. So if you have medication to take, but you have difficulty to remember to take your medication, it's really hard, and you're gonna forget your medication, and you're gonna be less adherent to your treatment. There is also a relationship between greater cognitive impairments and longer hospital stays. There is increased likelihood of having hospital admission. And it's also strongly associated with unemployment. People have a hard time finding jobs, keeping jobs, and also being able to work full time. It's really demanding for them. And also in youth populations, where oftentimes people will start experiencing symptoms in late teenage, it can be also really hard for them to finish their school, which can have like a really important impact on their functional outcomes. I'm talking about schizophrenia, but it's important to put this into perspective that the reason why I use schizophrenia is because this condition particularly is one of the conditions that is the most affected by cognitive impairments in psychiatry. But cognitive impairments are present among a lot of various mental health conditions. So you can see here, it's also very much present in people with bipolar disorder, with psychosis, substance use disorders, also with people with major depressive disorders when they're in their acute episode, but also when people remit from depression. 4 people, about 10 people, will still complain about brain fog and difficulty to pay attention. And right now, we really don't offer much for them to help them go on with their life. There are currently some trials that have shown promising, very preliminary results that try to identify molecules that could help our brain improving cognition in psychiatry. However, right now, none of these trials are advanced enough so that medication can be approved for the treatment of cognition in psychiatry. And despite the importance of cognitive deficits on the life of the people who live with these conditions, the option of treatments that we offer, I will say in most psychiatric hospitals, including the Royal here, is quite limited. There is one option that has been showing proof in the literature over the past, I would say, 15 years, and it's called cognitive remediation therapy. And this is what I will talk a little bit more with you today. Cognitive remediation therapy is a psychosocial intervention. So people are coming at the Royal, for instance, they meet with a therapist, and the therapist will teach them some specific skills and strategies that they can start using in their daily life. And they're going to practice those skills and strategies, making them do some specific exercises. The exercises can be done on pen and papers. Oftentimes, they're done on a computer program where they are challenged with different tasks they have to do. They're failing. The therapist is supporting them, improving their performance. And at the end of the session, they will leave with homework. It's very structured therapy where they will have to apply what they've learned in therapy in their life. And at the next session, the therapist will take time at the beginning of the session to discuss how did it go? How did the homework go that you had to do? Did you see some changes in the way you were able, for instance, to organize your bag in the morning when you had to go to your class, for instance, and go on. Typically, there's different programs that have been used for cognitive remediation, but typically the intervention will last between 6 to 12 weeks. It's either weekly sessions or bi-weekly sessions. And right now there's more than 25 meta-analyses just in schizophrenia, but it has been also shown efficient in other mental health conditions that have shown that cognitive remediation therapy can improve cognition. But it cannot just improve cognition. It also improves a lot of other outcomes that are important for patients. It improves social interactions. It improves employment. I was part of a study in Boston where people were followed up 10 years later after they completed cognitive remediation therapy. And what they saw is that 10 years later, the people who actually received the treatment were having way higher rate of employment compared to people who did not receive the intervention. So it seems to have long-lasting impact, at least in that sample at the time it had. It also reduced clinical symptoms, especially negative symptoms. There's more and more evidence, which is great because, like I mentioned earlier, if you remember, we do not have a good medication right now for negative symptoms neither, but cognitive remediation seems to also help with motivation. It gives them some hope that they can do something and that they can improve. So they're more motivated and it increases self-confidence. And finally, some studies reported changes in the quality of life overall. And here I'm just showing some brain results. This was a meta-analysis done in 8 studies at the time that have shown that not only cognitive remediation therapy increases outcomes, but we can also observe some changes in the brain. So even though we're not using medication, we're still able to see some changes in how the brain functions, which I think can be quite powerful, especially in a therapeutic alliance with a patient to say, hey, you can do something and you will see some change in your life, but also you have some power in changing how your brain works. This is something you can do. And I usually like to mention those studies to the patients I see across those trials. And this is really why we decided here at the Royal, our team, since I arrived, to develop the Cognitive Health Research Clinic. We wanted to increase access to quality of care for people who struggle with mental health conditions and cognitive difficulties to hopefully improve also their quality of life through this treatment. So this is a little bit the story of the clinic here. In 2019, I received a grant to use what we know works in cognitive remediation, but bringing a step forward. So I was mentioning earlier, oftentimes people will practice their cognitive skills and strategies with pen and paper exercise or computer exercises, which is great. But nowadays, the technologies allow us to not only do these exercises on a computer, but do it in a very immersive environment in virtual reality. And with the money that we got, we started working on a new cognitive remediation program that would be even better than what we have on the market right now, using virtual reality. We then, with the help of a postdoc at the time, Patricia Pelosi, decided to apply for Translation of Research into Care Award to start implementing cognitive remediation into the clinical service that we have at the Rural. And she was really interested in the forensic care. So we started to provide cognitive remediation, the very standard cognitive remediation type of therapy for executive function, and hopefully also improving the reduction of violent behaviors for people who receive forensic psychiatric care here at the Rural and also at Brockville. In 2021, I received another fund from the FRQS, it's like a foundation on the Quebec side, that allowed me to continue to push forward this virtual reality idea. And I'm really happy actually, because we just received today the news that the manuscript that was explaining the development of this therapy that we did in co-development with people with lived experience and clinicians received very minor review, which is kind of rare. Usually you always have to go through a few rounds of revisions before the paper gets accepted and published. But good news, today it was minor revision, so hopefully very soon you will have access to this, the development process and this therapy online. It's going to be an open access manuscript, so you'll be able to read it if you're interested in. And at the end, we received very recently another grant from the CIHR, where we are collaborating with other teams in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver to provide this cognitive remediation therapy remotely. So instead of people coming in weekly or bi-weekly, they can receive this therapy in the comfort of their home, which we hope can increase access to this type of therapy across Canada. So in 2023-2024, we launched two ongoing trials here in the Cognitive Health Research Clinic that I will show briefly in a moment. I wanted to say that before we actually launched the clinic, we also thought it was important to survey the workforce here at the Rural to know if this is really a need that the clinicians that are seeing patients day to day have. And this is just a summary of the response we received, but 70% of people agree that their clients were experiencing significant cognitive impairments. They also almost all agreed that cognitive health was highly important for their clients, and they expressed interest in the clinic that we were hoping to establish here. We also consulted with the Family Advisor Council and the Client Advisory Board. They all also really expresses that this was a need for the clients here. They were hoping that by integrating research and care, the patient could also improve their quality of life. And before I end my talk, because I saw I just have 5 minutes, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the two ongoing trials that we are running here at the clinic. So this is the remote cognitive remediation trial, where we offer two different types of cognitive remediation. It's really ongoing, and because it's a multi-site study, I cannot really show you results today, but I'm hoping maybe another time I can. The other trial that we started is with our virtual reality program that we finished to develop. We call it Think Tactic VR. And I have here a little video that shows you one of the modules. So this is the module where we tell patients that they are in a restaurant. This is their first day at their job. And we are training their memory skills and ability in that specific modules. So they're told to go in the restaurant, and they have to walk to this little circle that you see on the floor. And it's very immersive. When you put the VR, I don't know if you ever tried. If you never tried, you should really. It's very cool. And then you really feel that you are in the restaurant and people are ordering food at the tables. We're telling them some strategies and skills. For instance, we're explaining that they can group together the starters, the drinks, that it's going to be easier for them to remember the orders. And once they go to the table, they take the orders, they have to recall the orders to the cashier. And there's different levels, so the more you go, the more difficult it is. The last level is actually hard for myself. And this is just an example of what we can do with virtual reality with this new program that we're testing right now. And these are the preliminary results from the interim analysis that we did recently. It's with 19 participants. There's a lot of numbers and things on the slide, but if you look, the condition in green is the control condition. They were not doing the intervention. They were put in virtual reality, but they were basically doing mindfulness exercises, planting trees, walking in natural environments. And we're doing some homework about healthy habits, but that should not improve any of the outcomes we were interested in. And as you can see, the control condition, overall, the outcomes that we were interested in did not improve. Even there was a slight decrease in terms of their functional capacity. But if you look at the condition in blue, you can see that in all the outcomes, we see a substantial increase in theory of mind, which is the ability of understanding what another person may think in a specific situation, which I think virtual reality is very useful for training this type of cognition, and also all the functioning measures that we took, and some executive function, which is like the way we organize our life and we solve problems in our life. So what are the future directions for the clinic? I am hoping to get funding to start a more inclusive trial, because right now we are really limited with the grant agency funded trials that we have that have very strict inclusion-exclusion criteria and that are mostly focused on psychosis disorders. But as I explained earlier, people with many different types of conditions also experience cognitive impairments. So I would like at the clinic to be able to offer a naturalistic trial, a little bit like Dr. Tremblay just mentioned earlier, where people could come to the clinic if they struggle with a mental health condition and cognitive impairments, and we can offer them cognitive assessments and cognitive treatments and help them. So that's the first step. Then I have some ideas of what could be interesting to combine, for instance, physical exercise with cognitive remediation, because there's more and more studies that show that cognitive impairments can be improved with physical exercise alone. So I'm thinking, well, if we combine cognitive exercises with cognitive remediation and physical exercises, then we could potentially see even greater impact. We could also combine with neuromodulation, cognitive remediation. We can finally also use brain imaging to not only look at the impact these treatments can have on the brain, but also eventually also find ways of personalizing the treatment and targeting people who are more likely to then respond to cognitive remediation in our approaches. So I would like to thank all our team. We have the clinic team here, our lab also that has, of course, a big role in the clinical trials that we're running through our research, and all the trained therapists that are also involved in these projects. This is a very multidisciplinary team of people that are expert in mental health, and I think that's one of the strengths of the work that we do. So thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Cynthia, for this wonderful presentation. We're going to have time now for questions from the audience. For the audience, I would like to specify something that I should have told you from the get-go, and is that this is really cutting-edge research that makes a difference for care. Research shows that it takes up to 17 years to translate research into care. In this specific case, this is simultaneous. There's no wait time. The research brings the care to our client and for the benefit of the community. So I personally want to thank you for everything you do. It's now over to you. Our speakers welcome your questions.
Oh, really? Okay. The kind of control. Question on the neuromodulation. I heard, and you referred to at the end of the conversation, that it's a possible treatment for schizophrenia, and perhaps an option for electroconvulsive therapy. I assume that's the case, and it is being utilized right now. Do you have any data similar to its effectiveness about treating depression?
That's a very, very good question and important question. So currently at the Royal, it is not, there's no trial on the use of Artemis in schizophrenia, but it's done in many different parts of the world. The challenge is finding the circuit to target. So far, the results are not as encouraging as in depression. So this is where tools like MRI, like the scanner that we have here, can really help us figure out which circuit to target for the stimulation. So there's been studies showing that, for example, for negative symptoms, so for schizophrenia, we target a cluster of symptoms because it's oftentimes different circuits. So there are studies that show that it can be effective for negative symptoms, also for positive symptoms, also for cognition, but not to the same level. So there is a lot of research really on that topic.
Oh, okay. Hi, I had a question about the neuromodulation as well. You mentioned that there were some criteria that might disqualify you for safety reasons. I was wondering what that might be, if it's surrounding things such as pacemakers that magnetics might affect.
Exactly. So everything related to what the magnetic field could interfere with. So pacemaker is an example, cochlear implants, any metal implanted in the skull, that's quite rare, but it can happen for various reasons, and an history of epilepsy. So there's not many side effects to RTMS, but one very rare side effect is seizures. So it's less than 0.001. But we don't want to take any chance, and people that have a history of epilepsy are excluded. So those really are the main ones, so there's not many excluded.
I have two questions. One for Dr. Tremblay. First off, I think for both of you, doing a naturalistic trial is really exciting because sometimes research is hard to translate since people take such almost like pure forms of a disorder when in real life so many people have comorbidities or so many other factors that can affect their treatment. So for Dr. Tremblay, I was wondering, with that naturalistic trial, did you find that there were any specific factors that might have affected the treatment outcomes, like whether it's statistically significant or just things that you noticed, like substance use or other comorbidities?
So we're at the beginning of analyzing the data, so physical activity is one of them. So we don't know yet, but we measure so many things. So one other thing that I didn't mention that we looked into is simply looking at biological sex and gender. So we were quite surprised to see that in our sample so far, females tend to respond much better. And there was an interaction with physical activity. So active females had the best response in our sample. And I was quite surprised by that because I didn't find much information about gender or sex effects of RTMS. So we're doing a review of the literature to try to really understand the state of the field. So that's one example. So there's going to be much more to talk about in a year or two. We didn't start analyzing the other effect, but we're also interested in looking at age. So being naturalistic, we don't limit age. So we have people that are 85. So we'll be able to have different age group as well. Oftentimes trials stop at 65 years old. So we have actually a lot of records from the geriatric unit. So many things to look into.
And then, thank you. And then, Dr. Pinal, I was just wondering, for cognitive remediation, is there any success in it with people that have like neuropsychiatric disorders, like ASD or ADHD?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the research in that specific field is a little bit more emerging. But there's a lot of research, for instance, in cognitive neuromodulation that has targeted aging population and MCI population, for instance, that have shown great impact of this intervention. So there is no reason really to think that people with ADHD do not benefit from similar therapy.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I assume the participants in the trials were on different types of medications. Were there any correlations between the efficacy of the treatment and the different medications that people were on?
In the case of cognitive neuromodulation therapy, we do see, I would say more anecdotally, lower impact for people who are taking benzos. So a lot of the new trials that we're starting oftentimes, we're excluding people who are taking regularly benzos in our trials. Other than that, we did not really identify anything clear about this patient. So we started looking into that as well. So people that take part in our trials oftentimes are taking many medications. We're asked them to keep it stable during the time of the trial. So benzodiazepine also. In our case, there's been quite a few studies now that show that it can limit the efficacy of rTMS and probably it affects plasticity of the brain. So now, same thing, we do limit, we ask people to ask, if possible, to lower the medication or for benzodiazepine before they start treatment. And we started looking into the effect of other types of medication, and it seems that so far there's no interaction from what we see. We were a little bit worried about ADHD medication, so there's a lot of people that are taking ADHD medication, but it seems that it might actually help with treatment efficacy. So we don't know why for now, but so far that's what we know in terms of the interaction.
Thank you.
We are almost at time, but we have the time for one more question.
I was just gonna ask about, for Dr. Tremblay, whether SNRIs and SSRIs were involved, or whether you'd stay on them or not.
So the individuals stay on them. So we ask them to keep the standard of care that they're getting. And but there are studies that have tried to combine medication with rTMS, for example, starting in medication and rTMS at the same time, but we didn't do that in our case. So most of the people that are getting treated have SSRI at their daily.
So unfortunately, we're at time, but please stay with us, come and visit us. We'll have the time to have many more conversation, I'm sure. I want to thank you in the audience for coming and spending time with us. There is a square, how do you say that in Italian? A QR code, thank you very much, where you can provide your feedback. We welcome all your thoughts. Thank you again for being here. And let's talk again.